Thank you for joining us for this special edition of the book club for the Ultimate Deployment Guide. Today we are talking about a very important topic, which is self-care and relaxation during deployment. Now, before we get too far into it, if you are someone like me who is a little bit dubious of the term self-care and thinks that that is just for people who have too much time on their hands and can afford to go on spa days, and that self-care is not something for you, I'm here to tell you that maybe you have a misunderstanding of the term. Because self-care just means taking care of yourself, and it is something that is equally important and essential for everyone. It doesn't matter if you're someone who likes shopping or dislikes shopping, who enjoys a good pampering at a spa or not. Taking care of yourself can look like a lot of different things for a lot of different people, but it is always essential and important to do so. So that's what we're focusing on today. How to take care of yourself during deployment, why it is so important, and finally, looking at our Ultimate Deployment Guide, we will explore some of the ways that we can do self-care in simple, practical ways during deployment that don't involve getting away for a girls' weekend, don't involve getting a babysitter just to have some time by yourself, but real practical self-care tips that anyone can use at any point during deployment. So thank you for joining me for this session. This is session 10 of our book club. It's been really exciting spending the last few weeks with you and exploring the different challenges of deployment. We've talked about the earlier portions, preparing for deployment, doing all that paperwork, everything that you need to get your ducks in a row and get ready for that big moment when they leave and your countdown can finally begin. We also talked last week about some of the things that challenge people during deployment, especially if you're pregnant or expecting to give birth during deployment, raising young children by yourself, or just struggling to figure out what to cook when suddenly you're cooking for one. So if that's you, we have already explored some of those topics, and you can see them if you scroll back through this book club. But today, this is a topic that applies to anyone at any stage of deployment. I think, of course, self-care becomes more necessary and more evident as time goes on and those weeks turn into months and the deployment stretches and stretches until it feels like you've been doing deployment forever. But really, self-care is important at any time, before the deployment even begins, at the very early stages of the deployment, and certainly throughout the middle and the end as well. The way that you do self-care may have to adapt and change during those different stages, and that's okay. But I want you always to be thinking about how you can take care of yourself. And in the deployment guide, you'll see that on this page about self-care, we have broken it down specifically into 3 different categories. There are versions of physical self-care, which I think are the ones that people are most familiar with and comfortable with. People talk about going to the spa, getting your nails done, shopping for a new outfit. I know those are very feminine examples, and I'm sure that men have their own versions of self-care, but as a woman, those are the ones that I hear and that my friends are most apt to discuss. And those are all important. But if it's only about the physical self-care, people are often neglecting the mental and the emotional methods of self-care. And I believe that all 3 of them are important. Let me explain why. It was once explained to me that taking care of yourself during deployment, and really at any time, but especially when you're on your own during deployment, can feel a little bit like a 3-legged stool. And if you're only paying attention and only strengthening one leg of that stool, then the rest of it is not strong enough and you're still going to fall over. The way to maintain balance and take care of yourself during deployment is by paying equal attention and strengthening equally the physical, the mental, and the emotional legs of your stool of self-care. And so when you focus on all 3 of those areas, you'll find that you are taking care of yourself, you are meeting your own needs, and you are strengthening yourself to give you the energy to get through the rest of the deployment. Because here's the challenge, my friend. Deployments are long and deployments are exhausting. If you are going through one right now and you can relate to that feeling, please go ahead and leave me a comment, wave, give us a thumbs up. But I know that it is not an easy time. And to me, a deployment is much more like a marathon than a sprint. In a sprint, now I'm not a runner, but from what I'm told, in a sprint, the object is to push yourself as hard and as fast as you can towards that finish line. And you want to run at using every ounce of your energy, giving all that you have, because it's a very short burst of speed in this race. And that's great for sprinters. But in a marathon, you cannot use that same racing style. If you push yourself and use every last ounce of energy in the early miles of the marathon, there's no way that you're ever going to reach those final miles and get to the finish line. So marathon runners have to use a very different strategy. They talk about pacing themselves. They talk about running at a lower speed than they are capable of, because they can maintain that lower speed for a much longer, steadier period of time than a quick, short burst of speed that's not able to be maintained. And deployment is a lot like that. Sure, we could try to push ourselves every day and give every last ounce of energy taking care of the house and our jobs and maybe your kids or your pets or whatever other responsibilities you have. But that is just going to leave you exhausted. And if you don't have anything that is refueling you, refilling you, and taking care of those energy needs, then you're going to end up just doing a very short sprint, and you're not going to make it through the full marathon of deployment. You will end up physically exhausted, emotionally drained, probably snapping at people and, mentally aggravated and grumpy and cranky with everyone around you. And that is not a way for anyone to go through deployment. You have to find that level speed that you can pace yourself, use enough energy to do what you need to do and complete your tasks. And I'm not saying that you need to give up on any responsibilities around the house, but do what you need to do, but not waste your energy and exhaust yourself. And so self-care, really, the idea behind it is just to find ways that refill you and refuel you and make you feel more energized and more positive about the tasks that you have ahead. So if we're going to go with that racing analogy, then self-care is kind of like that water station that you encounter as you're going through your race. It's hot, you're exhausted, you're sweating, you're losing that energy from your body through the sweat, you're losing your moisture, and you have to do something to replenish and refuel. And so sometimes at races, you'll see the tables set up with all the paper cups and people are cheering on the racers there. And maybe there's some orange slices that they can grab really quickly for that burst of sugar and vitamin C. And just stopping at that refreshment table, getting the cold cup of water, either drinking it or dumping it on your head to cool off. And then that gives you the energy that you need to keep going another mile, the next lap, the next part of the race that you need to complete. So self-care can be that same burst of energy, that same sense of refueling at a table, getting a cold drink of water, and getting what you need to face the next day, the next week, the next month of your deployment. Now, I will also admit to you that I have not always had the best relationship with self-care. I'm a mom of 5 kids, okay? So I don't get a lot of time to myself, and I'm not very good at always taking the time that I need for myself, especially during a deployment. We've always gone through deployments far away from family. It's typically been me taking care of young children on my own. And without a regular babysitter or any regular type of childcare, I don't typically have a self-care routine that I can rely on during deployment. I can't expect to have a full day off or a Saturday to myself or one day a month to meet up with my friends. Those things will not automatically happen unless I organize them and make them happen. So I will confess that during our first few deployments, I didn't really know too much about this concept of self-care. I knew that I needed to take care of myself, and I did what I needed to around the house, and I got dressed every day, and I got up and went to work, and I bathed, and I figured that doing those essential tasks was taking care of what I needed to do. But it's not enough. Just getting up and going to work and getting dressed and washing yourself every day is only taking care of your physical needs. And you need to think about the mental and emotional drains of deployment as well. And I used to get really frustrated during my husband's earlier deployments because I would hear other spouses in the spouses group talking about, oh, we're going to do a spa day. We are going to do a shopping trip. We're all going to go together and get our nails done. And to me, as a young mom with no childcare, those seemed like impossible things. I would love to do those things, but they just seemed realistic and not achievable for me where I was at that stage of life with no one to give my children to for a few hours and really no extra money to pay for those nice events. And so I just figured that self-care wasn't for me at those stages. And I'd also hear other people talk about how they love to take long bubble baths and, just sit down with a glass of wine and maybe listen to a favorite podcast or a favorite music list. And those ideas of self-care didn't appeal to me either. I don't like taking bubble baths, I'll say it. And so when people would talk about self-care as if it was only something that's possible at the spa or with a babysitter or with a bunch of bath oils, it didn't relate to me and I didn't connect to those elements of self-care. But what I discovered, kind of the hard way, that I'm trying to share with you so that you don't have to go through it the hard way, is that there are a million ways to self-care. And the important thing is to find the one that works for you. Your self-care should not just be one bubble bath now and then or one spa day during the entire deployment, although it's really nice if you can make those things happen. But realistically, self-care should be an ongoing routine. And I learned that if I could do little tiny things, some of them every day and some of them at least once a week, if I could keep these little routines going through the deployment, then that was enough to keep me refilled and energized without having to plan some major event, without having to get a babysitter, without having to pay a lot of money to go on a weekend trip somewhere. That there were little things that I could do to take care of myself and give me those little 5-minute, 10-minute bursts of refreshment and relaxation. So that's what I challenge you to look for. I don't want you to think of self-care as some major event that you need to save up money for and just do one time during the entire deployment. But I want you to think about what are some regular self-care routines that you can do right now in your house with the money that you have, with the materials that you have, something that is very easy and simple and quick for just a few minutes a day. What is something that you can add to your routine that will give you that refreshment and that moment of relaxation? So that's why we have this work little checklist in the Ultimate Deployment Guide. I want you to think of physical ways to take care of yourself during deployment. Yes, this can be bubble baths, but for some people, they've even mentioned that something as simple as getting a new body lotion or a new product that helps them feel fresh and clean and rejuvenated and softens their skin, whatever it is that you're looking for. Just taking a few minutes to put some hand lotion on to heal your cracked skin on your hands, that can be a moment of self-care. It's a moment that you didn't absolutely have to do, but that you're doing it to take care of yourself because you value yourself. And I think that when you do these things, what you're telling yourself is, you are worth it, you are important, and I respect myself. So physical self-care, it can be anything that's physical. That means taking care of your skin, your hair, your makeup, your showering routines. It can also be clothing, the way that you are taking care of yourself, cleaning yourself, getting new clothing, maybe getting a fresh outfit every now and then as some type of celebration and reward for going through deployment. It can be shoes. A lot of people love to collect shoes, accessories, but it's about valuing yourself as a physical person with a physical body. So I'd love to hear from you. What are some ways that you can reward yourself throughout the deployment? Remember, this is ongoing, not just a one-time, really expensive outfit and a trip to the store, but in an ongoing way. What are some things that you can do every day or every week to show yourself that you're valued and important as a physical person? Maybe that means every now and then getting dressed up for those video calls with your service member. Of course, they still love you when you're in your sweatpants and your PJs at home. But maybe every now and then it would be refreshing to do your hair, do your makeup, do the whole routine, make yourself feel confident and beautiful and good, and then get on the video call and see if that helps your self-care. Now, on a mental level, this includes everything about your brain. We need to find ways to relax our brain, to stop it from thinking about the million crazy things that a brain likes to explore during the day. But we also need to find ways to express ourselves in a creative way and to get all those ideas out of our brains. So your mental self-care can be a wide range of things. Yes, if you have a mental condition, this can include talking to a therapist and taking the required medicine and doing what's necessary for your mental health. I understand that. But on a non-doctor, non-prescription level, your mental self-care could just be things like reading a book that challenges you, a book that you enjoy, maybe exploring a new time period in history. It can also be just a mush book that gives you a moment of relaxation, and that's fine too. You could do crosswords or mental puzzles. Some people find Sudoku very relaxing. There's tons of games and puzzle apps that you could play either by yourself or with your service member. And the whole point of this mental self-care is to give your brain a few minutes to gather, to collect, and to relax. Now, on a creative side, some people really enjoy journaling. You may find that there's a million ways to do journals, so I'm not going to do the whole lecture here, but you could keep a deployment journal. You could write down every day something that you are thankful for. You could write letters to your service member to let them know how much you miss them and care about them. Some people keep prayer journals. They do devotionals. We'll have a whole other topic coming up on talking about prayer and journaling through deployment. But all of that would come under your mental self-care. You want to be using your brain as a creative organ, but you also want to be taking care of your brain. So find those moments to help your brain relax, especially before bed. There are so many people who talk about having sleep issues and struggling to fall asleep during deployment. And I know, I totally get that. I don't enjoy sleeping in a cold, empty bed. And I definitely spend way too much time sitting there in the dark and scrolling and thinking that I should probably go to sleep now because it's getting really late, but I can't stop myself and I can't turn off my brain. So if you can find a different creative outlet in the evenings that's going to help turn off your brain and let you get some rest. Some people like coloring books. There's plenty of adult coloring books, everything from sassy comments to funny things to beautiful things. You can do all kinds of coloring and intricate pictures, but whatever will help relax your brain and help you express yourself creatively, that is part of your mental self-care. So I want you to think about it and write down some ways that you will help your brain relax and take care of itself. And finally, let's talk about emotional self-care, shall we? Because this past year has been very hard for a lot of people. There are a lot of emotions that come up during deployment. It's a whole roller coaster. I know there's ups, there's downs, there's good days, there's bad days. There's a lot of doubt and confusion and questions that never get answered. Deployments are very hard emotionally. You need to have a way to refresh and take care of yourself on an emotional level. So who are the people that you can talk to when you're having a bad day? Have you considered talking to a therapist? You don't have to be in a place where you are, really in a dark place and feeling alone and shut in before you seek a therapist. therapists can help on a huge variety of topics, and Military One Source offers them for free. You can also get coverage through TRICARE without having any type of referral from a doctor. You can just go to the TRICARE list and sign up for a professional therapist. So definitely consider any type of counseling or therapy as a way to take care of your emotional health. But you can also do it through friends by connecting yourself with groups in your community. I know how hard that is these days. We just moved this past year, and trying to get settled in a new community during COVID when there are no community events has been really challenging. But there are still groups that are meeting online, on Zoom, that are connecting through Facebook or forming real life groups that are meeting in small amounts. And so there are ways that you can connect emotionally with people and find the emotional outlets that you need. So write down your ideas for how you will gain peace of mind during deployment. And at the bottom here, I wrote, remember to rest. And the bubble box says, this is when I know I'm exhausted. This bar down here can be your little alarm, your reminder of when you need to take a moment of self-care. And for some of us, that's every day. Some of us, I know there were times in my life where every afternoon when I had spent the whole day taking care of children and now I had to get ready to prepare for dinner, and the kids kind of hit that witching hour right around dinner that is not pleasant. Sometimes that is when I needed to just take a moment to breathe and refresh. And my little ritual was an afternoon cup of tea. Just making tea helped to soothe me and relax me, and just to kind of step outside of the moment and collect my thoughts. That can be helpful to you. Maybe you go for a walk around the block. Maybe you sit down and pet your dog for a few minutes. Sometimes you just need that ritual. Write it down here. When are the difficult parts of your day? Maybe it's right before bedtime, like I was talking earlier about. Maybe you're one of those many spouses that has trouble falling asleep when your service member is away. So what are some of the self-care routines that you could do in the evening to help yourself calm and relax and to settle to sleep without all that stress and anxiety from the day weighing on your shoulders? There are things that you can do to take care of yourself and to rejuvenate yourself and to re-energize during deployment. And if you're looking for some inspiration, I have some ideas listed on this page. Obviously, this is not exclusive. You can do all of these things. You could do none of these things and come up with your own. This is just to get you thinking. But in 5 minutes, if you only needed a 5-minute break, and that's all you had, it was a 5-minute break for self-care, what are some things that you could do? And these are things that I do, or I try to do, almost every day. There are breathing and relaxing exercises that you can do. Either just look them up and do a quick breathing exercise. There's apps like Calm that will help you do a quick breathing exercise or walk you through it. So you can do that. You can listen to a favorite song, repeat a phrase that calms you. Some people have a little mantra or a phrase that they say when they find that they're getting exhausted or worn out or stressed. And repeating that phrase can really calm you down. You can pet a dog. You can make a cup of coffee or tea. So if that's all you have is 5 minutes and you need to take care of yourself, I would challenge you to add some of these things, at least one into your morning routine and one into your bedtime routine, and see what that does to boost your self-care, your energy, your self-respect, and the confidence that you have going through deployment. Now, if you have longer, there's lots of other ways that you can enjoy self-care. Maybe you have 10, 20 minutes. Maybe you have a whole quiet evening to yourself. You can do things like read a book, go for a walk, take a luxurious bath. If you enjoy the bubbles, that's fine. Enjoy the bubbles. Call a friend. It can be so therapeutic to actually talk to a friend, not through text, but on the phone or through video chat. And write in a journal. We talked about that. Oops, I'm off the screen. Sorry. Writing in a journal can be a very relaxing way to spend some time. And finally, every month, I would like you to come up with a big self-care item that will refresh and refuel you and give you a celebration cause for every month down in the deployment. Now, this will look different from everyone. I don't want you to steal your friend's self-care idea. If they've planned out some big event or some big trip that they're looking forward to, that doesn't mean you have to plan the exact same thing. Do what works for you and what you are going to enjoy. But some ideas are eat something special. That can be trying out a new restaurant. That can be ordering delivery food if you don't typically allow yourself to order food. It can be just preparing a special meal that you enjoy and maybe your service member does not. Go somewhere with friends. If you can plan out a day trip or a local hike or a place to visit with friends, obviously outdoor places are open right now, but there are a lot of indoor places that are open too, as long as you wear a mask and stay safe. So I would encourage you to grab at least one friend and plan a special day once a month as you're counting through your deployment. You can also take an hour to do something peaceful. Whatever is peaceful for you. I want you to think through these routines. And finally, send a letter or a care package. Connecting with your service member in any way usually is a good method of self-care. And so it doesn't have to be a decorated care package if you are not the crafty person and you don't have those materials on hand. That's okay. We did a whole separate video on care packages and how to prepare them and how to send them in a very easy, streamlined way. So I hope that you will think about some of these ways to count down your month, and I want you to add your own ideas as well. And at the bottom of this page, there's a special bar to think about the holidays. I know holidays are really hard during deployment, and you need to sometimes pull out all the stops and do all the self-care during the holidays because they are physically exhausting, they are emotionally draining, and they are mentally challenging. So if you are not refreshing and refueling during the holidays, you're going to burn yourself out. So on the blue bar, take some special time to think about if there is an upcoming holiday during deployment. And I'm not just talking about Christmas, I'm talking about any of the holidays that people spend together with their friends and family. Sometimes they sneak up on you and it can be really frustrating and lonely during the 4th of July or Labor Day. My family had a big Labor Day tradition and I always missed my service member when he wasn't able to join us at the big family get together. And of course, Valentine's Day, when you see all the pictures of all the couples and you would just give anything to be close to your service member and to give them a hug. It can be very exhausting facing those holidays alone. So you need to have extra self-care tips and a little bit of extra strategy, something to look forward to so that you can get yourself powered through those challenging moments. So I hope that you will take the time to look through the deployment guide, focus on the things we've discussed today, and fill out those charts for your own personal self-care and relaxation strategies. Of course, we want to hear from you in the comments as well. If you have techniques that you've been using, things that work for you, if you have a little 5-minute ritual that you think might be helpful for other people, go ahead and let us know. What is your favorite self-care tip? And what is something that has really helped you to feel more energized and confident and in control of yourself during this deployment? We want to gather all those self-care ideas. Feel free to pick and choose and combine until you find a self-care routine that works for you. Now, I will tell you, we have a whole lot more about this in the Deployment Masterclass. The Masterclass is a series of video trainings and interviews that I conducted with a dozen experienced military spouses. I interviewed them on all of the biggest deployment and homecoming and preparation topics, the questions that people are constantly asking during deployment, and we asked them to share their strategies that had worked during multiple deployments. So I really love some of the advice and the strategies that are shared in the Deployment Masterclass, and I do encourage you to sign up for that as well. Once you register for the program, you can watch those video trainings at any time. So that means whether you are a few months away from deployment or right in the middle of deployment, you can watch whichever videos you need when they are relevant to your life. And I hope that they will give you the confidence and the peace and just the reassurance that you need that you can, in fact, get through deployment. We all have one way or another, and we want to share the tips that will make it easier for you. So I definitely encourage you to check out the Deployment Masterclass. I will drop a link in the comments so you can see how to access it. And I hope that you will join us. Our next session will be coming up on Wednesday, and we are going to talk a little bit more about prayer and journaling during deployment. Now, if those are topics that don't appeal to you, I totally understand. Feel free to skip that session. But if you are someone who wants to delve a little bit deeper into this self-care topic and figure out some hands-on strategies of how to handle your self-care during deployment and how to get started on either a prayer routine or a writing and journaling and letter writing routine, then that will be the video session for you. So I've really enjoyed spending this time with you today. Thank you so much for being part of the Deployment Book Club. And my name's Lizanne Lightfoot, the seasoned spouse. I will see you next time.